안녕하세요, Seoul. 안녕하세요, beLAUNCH. Hi. Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity to come to talk to you briefly about how we believe at Amazon Web Services you can best leverage cloud computing for media distribution. My name is Kingsley Wood. I'm living in Singapore right now, where we manage the headquarters for APAC's delivery of Amazon Web Services. So a lot of you probably know a little bit about the cloud. You've heard a little bit about what people talk about the cloud computing and so on. And I'm not going to go into a tremendous amount of detail about that here. I just wanted to briefly summarize a lot of the points that many people make when they talk about cloud. And Amazon's perspective of the cloud really boils down to 4 key points. A cloud needs to be elastic. You need to be able to add capacity, but also take it away when you don't need it. So it needs to be elastic in nature. The second main point that we like to make is it needs to be on demand. You don't want to wait around when you need new capacity. So if you need new storage servers, you need new instances in the cloud, you need new load balancers, you want that capacity immediately. So it needs to be on demand. The third very important aspect of cloud computing from our perspective is everything is pay as you go. You're only going to pay for the utility of the utilization of the capacity that you actually make use of. So this is very effective for cost reduction. And then the fourth thing which cloud computing brings about is that it helps you to focus on your business. None of you want to be in the business of managing a big IT infrastructure. This is what we can do for you. We call it undifferentiated heavy lifting. We can do the headache stuff for you. We can take care of the heartache of IT while you can focus on your business. Now, when this applies to media distribution, there are many aspects of our storage services and our capacity that you can utilize, but key things that you need to be thinking about is how do you store your media? Where are you archiving it? Right? How do you actually process the media when it comes in? A lot of user-generated content comes in a lot of different forms, and you need to transcode it. And then you need to analyze all the data and collect all the data of all your millions of users. And finally, the most important part of it is the delivery, distribution, and getting that media out so that your users can enjoy the content. So if you don't mind, I'm going to spend just a few minutes giving you a little bit of a chalkboard suggestions of how we think you can leverage cloud computing to make your media distribution more cost-effective and also more experience enjoying for the end user. How does the end user improve their experience? The first thing I want to talk about is this concept of offloading your static content to a content delivery network. The more that you can take your static content, and by that I mean your JPEGs, the media files, the images, CSS, everything into the content distribution network, the servers, which you see on the left there, can be actually reduced because you don't need as many of them to feed the same amount of media to your users. So in terms of taking the media, putting it into a storage system, then making that storage system available through a content delivery network, you can actually distribute the content and reduce the number of servers you need in the back end. This actually reduces your costs because now you have less of an expense, less capacity required to deliver the same kind of content. A great example of this is a customer of ours in Singapore called Perks. They have a very cool mobile app, and when you travel around the city, it'll actually tell you about different restaurants close to where you are. Now, the content that's being delivered to the mobile app changes as the user walks around the city. And those static content, those little icons that you can see, they are the same for everybody. So by putting them into a content distribution network, the servers, the web servers, don't need to feed out all of those icons all the time. The second aspect of this is the dynamic part of the application. When I walk past a subway, it tells me that today there's a special on sandwiches in that particular subway. That's a dynamic call based on who I am, where I am, and the restaurant that's close by me. Now, those dynamic calls can also be fed through the content delivery network, so that once the first person walks past the subway and the offer comes to them, the second person that walks by, the offer is already stored at the edge. So there's no need to go back to the database, back to the original web server to get this content. You get the idea? So we are advocating that you actually serve your entire application through the content delivery network. This is a very effective way of speeding up the transmission of the experience to the user, but also reducing the number of back and forth chatter, right? The amount of traffic back and forth to the web servers. So this can be very effectively redirecting the traffic from the users through the content delivery network. Another aspect of what we advocate for using cloud computing in the best way for you is actually to load balance all the time. So we highly recommend that you use load balancing to actually put in front of your servers. As you grow, you will find that the users always have the same endpoint. They're always going to that same load balancer. And the load balancer is able to direct the traffic to the different servers. Now, as you go from 1 server to 2 servers to 500 servers, as the number of your users increase, you might need to change the version of your software, for instance. Using load balancing, you can actually change half of your capacity to version 2 and leave the other capacity on version 1. When everything's working, you can convert it all to version 2. But the whole time, the user is not interrupted. You want the user to have a seamless experience so they're able to enjoy using the mobile app or using the website without any interruption. Now, obviously, we hope that you have lots of users and you need even more servers. So the next aspect of this is, can you make your system auto-scale? We want you to be able to add capacity and take capacity away depending on the conditions of your application. One of the ways you do this is by monitoring. We're listening in on the servers in the cloud. We can see how much the utilization of the CPU is, how much memory is being taken up, how many connections there are. And if we know that the system is getting busy, we can add more capacity. If the system is getting quiet, we can take capacity away. And we do this across multiple data centers. We call them availability zones. And this enables you to build a very fault-tolerant system that can handle failures in one particular instance if there's a bug in the software or something. So all of these things tied together to suggest that you should use load balancing from the very beginning when you're designing your application, in the hopes that you become very successful, that your application becomes wildly popular, and that you can handle all this traffic. This is another aspect of the scalability of using the cloud. Just another great example of this is a company in Singapore again called Book, and they have written a web application for their customer Singapore Press Holdings. Now, every few days there's a big news alert, big news item comes up. When that item gets broadcast to the cell phones and the iPads and so on, all of the users come back to read the news article because it's an alert, like an SMS message. Now, they've designed a very clever system to take advantage of the cloud to achieve this very, very cost effectively. And the way they do it is this. On the left there, you see the company, the Singapore Press Holdings. When they have a news item, they broadcast this back to the instances in the cloud. But before they tell the users about this news alert, what they will do is ramp up. They'll actually increase the amount of capacity. They'll add a whole lot of new instances in the cloud. So this takes about 5 or 6 minutes. Once they're ready with all this new capacity, you can then tell the customers, yes, there's a news item. So that the customers then come back with all of their inquiries. They want to see the web page, but the capacity is ready. They can handle the scale. What's wonderful about this is that within an hour, they can actually shut these machines down because they no longer need them. Most people will read the news and then go on with their day. But while that hour is long, we can have all the capacity we need, and after the hour, you don't need to have all the capacity waiting for you. So it's a very efficient way of ramping up and down. Another example is companies that can scale their systems based on the time of day. You might recognize a typical workflow like this. When people are at work, they're using a system. When people are at home, they're not using the system. So why would you want to keep the capacity at that top level when you don't need it all day long? If you just blocked it into 2 sections alone, daytime, nighttime, you can actually make massive savings by switching some of the machines off during the night. And this is exactly what a company called Pinterest did. You might recognize them. During their expose of their details of how they were running some of their infrastructure last year, they shared with us that they were running part of their system for $52 per hour during the day. But at night, they shut down a lot of the machines, and they're actually only running for $15 per hour at night. Very efficient, cost-effective way of doing this. Now, this is all great if you've got your application running, but I know that everyone here is hoping to make your success with your startup or your launch to make it go global. And this is where cloud computing really shines. We can help you to go global in minutes. You can take your application and distribute it around the world in a set of infrastructure plays that are available through Amazon Web Services. And I want to briefly just describe some of these services that we have. We have regions in numerous parts around the world. We have availability zones, and those are basically like data centers. And then we have edge locations. So a little bit more detail. We have 8 regions around the world, and a 9th one for the government cloud in the US. And these regions are made up of multiple data centers we call availability zones. So for instance, there's 2 in Singapore, 3 in Tokyo, 2 in Sydney, and so on. In addition to all of these regions and availability zones, we have what we call edge locations. And this is the edge points of our content distribution network called CloudFront. This helps to bring all of your content, your media, your web, your application, close to the end users. And at the moment, we have 39 edge locations, but very exciting, we have some fantastic news to share with you today. And I know this audience will really appreciate what K-pop means, but we have wanted another expression for an edge location is POP, point of presence. And Amazon Web Services has now got their own K-pop. Today we announced the 40th edge location for Amazon Web Services, which is based here now in Seoul. And it's active just a few hours ago. So that's very exciting news for us to be able to share. So please go and find out more about this. If you are already on Amazon Web Services, the greatest thing about this is that you don't need to change anything. Your application will now go through our edge location here in Seoul, and you'll find that the performance will be vastly improved. In fact, some of our employees today have already announced that they think it's up to 10 times faster just since it was switched on this morning. So that's very exciting. And here in Korea, we already have several customers that are using Amazon Web Services. Samsung, you might be familiar with them. A customer called Dorm, which we'll be talking about in the next panel. And they have actually released 2 web applications or 2 mobile applications that are using AWS, serving hundreds of thousands of customers, all of these companies. The greatest thing about it is that they can now serve their customers in Korea much more effectively because the content distribution network is right here at home. So thank you very much for your time. 감사합니다. Appreciate it. Thank you. We're going to start here.